Just ring the bell and kick ass.
The following podcast is scheduled for one topic with a 20-minute time limit.
All right, Steve, on this episode, because we rambled way too much about AEW the last episode, I want the same honest evaluation of not Tony Khan's product, but your product, sir.
Welcome to the official Warrior Wrestling Podcast with your hosts, Warrior Wrestling President Steve Tortorello and Warrior Digital Wizard Henry Jasper.
That is a great question. And I would say that we are similarly in the wilderness to an extent. From a purely creative standpoint, you and I have talked about this on the episode where we discussed problems facing the indies. It is difficult to figure out a unique value proposition for an independent wrestling promotion right now. It was very clear when we started in 2018. It was still clear when we worked through 2019. It was clear early in the pandemic. With AEW having signed so many talent and running so many shows, they're doing 104 TV tapings a year. They'll be doing a dozen pay-per-views a year, presumably next year. And with that indie style, as you and I have talked about, being so prominent on television through AEW and in WWE to a lesser extent, what the local indie promotion offers you as a fan has shifted and needs to shift. And you and I talked about this in another episode. It might need to be more character-based. It might need to be more ongoing story-based. The idea of going to a show just because you're going to see an incredible match, you see 15 incredible matches across AEW's platforms each week. And so there might be a saturation there. You know, you can stay home on Friday night and Saturday night, watch Pentagon and Commander and Vikingo. So why do you drive 2 hours to Chicago or Washington or Seattle or wherever to see matches like that when you can see them from your couch and see a ton of them? So because of that, I think we are very much at a crossroads in figuring out what is it that we can offer that is unique to an audience that they'll want to pay for and come see and be part of. And you've seen us, and we've talked about this, doing some more character stuff. Obviously, the FTC LLC, much to my chagrin, has run roughshod over Warrior for the last year or so. So you're seeing some of those story elements. You're seeing some of those heat elements. You're seeing some more gimmick characters in more prominent roles. We've had gimmick characters in minor matches in the past. But I think because simply of what talent is available floating around unsigned on the indies and the banger saturation of AEW, the independent wrestling is at a crossroads right now. And there are other promotions that have shifted what they do and how they do it. So I'm a nerd, right? I try to keep an ear to the ground on all of the different promotions across the country that I think are doing cool and unique stuff. And some of them have started to shift away from the super indie model towards a more specific, more localized model. And that's something we can do, right? We don't have nearly as many national stars as we used to on a Warrior show. We have more local stars mixed with national stars, but it's still very much a question mark for what we know. We can offer great matches. We know we can offer the chance to meet some AEW stars and other stars in person. We know we can offer a fun night out for everybody, but in the pantheon of all that's being offered in wrestling, what can we do that's unique and different? And for the first 3/5 of our life, we had a pretty good handle on that. Yeah, I'd even go 4/5 too, because I think for 18, 19, 20, 21, we were doing something unique pre-COVID and in the pandemic. And then in 2022, with Will Ospreay's title reign and us going to South Bend and Grand Rapids and St. Louis, we were able to bring some of those big stars to markets that usually didn't get big stars. Now that we've done that, we've got to figure out what is the next evolution. And you know, one of the reasons, among others, creatively, that we don't have another show on the books immediately is that I don't have an idea, and Eric and I collectively don't have an idea for what we can do that is unique and different. We can put on a show. We don't ever want to do anything that isn't the best we could possibly offer. And if we put together an idea of a card for a show, we need to look at it before we've ever promoted it or announced it. We think we're going to have this, we're going to have this, we're going to have this, we're going to have this. We need to ask ourselves, is that a show we drive 2 hours to see ourselves? And if it's not, we don't press go on that show. We aren't at the place yet where we feel like we've put together the next iteration of that. So that's a lot of thoughts and a lot of talking, but all that to say, we're in the wilderness, just like I think AEW is.
Wow, that's awesome. I appreciate you being transparent about that. I think Warrior fans that listen to this podcast will actually really appreciate your candor about a lot of that. And like, just as a member of the team, like, I think it's kind of interesting and it's good for us. It's like that Will Ospreay time was excellent for a lot of reasons. Like we had Thunder and we had Athena too. So like there was a lot going on that was in our favor. And like again, now there are a couple of other indies right now that are actually gaining a lot of steam by still using that, and good on them. And they're doing a great job. But I don't know. Personally, as the guy who might get to edit some of the content and be a part of making it, I'm interested to know what you guys decide on. Because, like, we don't have to get into any of those details, but, like, I've been involved in a couple conversations where certain avenues were thrown out, and all of those are weirdly exciting, but, like, will it work? You know what I mean? So, anyway.
Yeah.
I'm excited, man, and thank you for being transparent about that. So, why don't you just call Frank and have him book the next show since he's carried the damn company for the last 4 shows? Anyway, no offense, Casey. Shit, I'm gonna get a text. The champ's gonna cut a promo on me. This came up when Juice invited me on for the Juice wrestling podcast to talk about this show and the launch of it. And it kind of came up a little bit like, well, what's next? And I'm just like, dude, I have no idea how to answer that question, dude. You're asking the wrong person. I was like, as soon as they know, we'll know, and the world will know. But I don't know. So.
Yeah, and we don't know either. And again, we don't want to put out. I have a phrase for if you go to a restaurant and the food is fine, and people are like, "Oh, how's the food at Chez Henry?" And I'm like, "It's fine. It's warm food, right? Like it's not bad. There's not a bug in my food, but it's warm food, right? Like I'm not going to remember it in a week, and I don't want to put out warm food."
Have you thought about a deathmatch tournament?
No, God, no. Not only is it not my flavor of ice cream, which if it's your flavor of ice cream, good for you. No issues, no judgment. I think there's also a market saturation for that, right? Like even the GCW does far less death matches than they used to do. They've almost phased it out, not entirely, but they've downsized it significantly. There's a couple of deathmatch promotions out there, but you will have seen that hit its peak and died. I think. Again, there's a solid 200 people that'll show up to whatever deathmatch show you put on in Chicago or LA or Philly or wherever. But that as a draw or a unique cultural moment of interest, I think that has passed.
What if we have an entire card full of different types of things on pole matches? Is this why I'm not on the booking committee?
Oh, God, you get the Vince Russo award, Henry.
It would either be that or it would be like, let's bring Sting in, no matter how much it costs. That's all my brain would do.
But honestly, even that. So here's what scares me about. So I've had a ton of conversations with various stars and their managers when it's relevant over the last year or two. A lot of whom we've passed on bringing in because the cost benefit analysis is still a risk, right? So like I won't say who, but I had a conversation about bringing in a major star for a major signing, and they were so expensive that it was like, even as big as this star is, like, we would need to sell $450 autographs, you know what I mean, to make it make sense financially. And it's like, you don't even know what the draw of some of those people is, because look how tough it is for AEW to draw, right? AEW with every star, they're bringing Mox and Sting and MJF and this person and this person and this person and this person and this person, and they're drawing 3,000 for Dynamite. And so it's like, and they've got national promotion and they're an established promotion. Like So it is kind of scary right now to spend on big stars because they've got all the big stars and they can't draw. So what makes an indie think that an indie's going to draw? I mean, the days of the top indies drawing near 1,000 regularly is over. And so we've got to scale for that and plan for that. So it's so interesting that there is, and I saw somebody else tweet something to this effect recently, that they were mad at AEW about bringing in Ric Flair, which I think is silly, but they're like, well, on to waiting for the next thing to happen in the industry. And I feel like AEW has kind of hit this place where like it is what it is unless they shake it up, like we talked about last episode. And so WWE is a constant, AEW is a constant, Impact is a constant, New Japan is a non-factor in the United States anymore. ROH is a taping pal of AEW. The industry has hit a new homeostasis, and it's time for something to shake it up.
We're a live show, but we have a plan for 3 months and it builds to something, and it's all recorded and released. We've talked about this before. And we represent the product online differently.
But I think part of it, you can do something where you record, but in that sense, to record a lot up front and release, like NWA does that, right? Impact does that on television. NWA has done it on YouTube and Fight. You need to have a consumer base that is looking to consume it online. And it's so interesting because I think right now, not only is the live event business dying outside of WWE or hurting outside of WWE, but so is the online buzz. Like with all the ways that Twitter X has changed in the last 6 months, the amount of shows that you see talked about and discussed. So I used to in 2016, 17, 18, 19, every Saturday morning, Sunday morning, Monday morning, I would spend time on Twitter just soaking up all the discussion of the great indie shows from across the country, right? All of the clips, all of the pictures, who did what. Like I dove into it like a student. Now that's not there. Like you might see some clips here or there, but it's the way that all the algorithms have changed that you only see a small group of people yelling at each other on the threads, not threads, the app, but like the Twitter threads and things. The way to discover what's going on and to watch and consume what's going on has changed, because as a consumer myself, again, I used to watch all of this discussion and then go watch shows based on what I saw. That's not there anymore. So I don't know if we recorded and put things out digitally, if there is a market there for people to consume it outside of our floor of, several hundred people who would watch everything. It could be you and I reading the phone book and people would watch it. But outside of that core, is there a demand for more recorded wrestling product? Like again, as an AEW fan, that's my favorite flavor. I only watch one of their 3 shows. Right? Like I don't want to watch any more wrestling than that. And I'm a wrestling promoter.
How do we do the live show different then? And I think that's the question you guys are probably asking yourselves.
Yeah.
But so this is my gut, and this is just Henry's opinion. Take it for whatever it is. I don't, You said a couple of minutes ago, the days of us meaning indie promotions drawing 1,000 people at a live show might be over. And my question is that true? Or is the possibility there, but the tactic or the, like, maybe Banger City big name all the way down the card thing worked for a time, but now it's oversaturated because everybody's getting a chance to do it? So how do we still draw 1,000 people? What do 1,000 people want to see on a wrestling show?
Yeah.
And maybe it's not 1,000 all at once. Maybe it's 200 turns into 500, turns into 750, turns into 1,000, because there's some hook that's bringing them back week after week. And maybe that crazy genius over there at the NWA saying crazy shit like, I'm going to bring the territories back, is what he's talking about. Because the territories worked, because every week you would go there as a family. It was a ritual. And there was a story that led into next week, and it was live show. They didn't stream it.
Yeah, so I think I don't think that's a bad idea. No. I think so. All right, pulling the curtain back, huge, because those that watch this podcast are diehard fans. We only got 3 minutes left. Eric and I have talked about what we've called our medieval times model, which is do we need to focus on this being a self-contained thing for non-wrestling fans? Can we find a way to attract tons of families who aren't coming to see Fuego del Sol or Zach Wentz or Nick Wayne? They're just coming to see a thing with their families in their community, and we give them new characters they've never seen before because they don't know many characters, and it's all self-contained in a given night. So that's something we call the medieval times model that we've been trying to work out. The challenge to that model is getting people who aren't wrestling fans to give wrestling a shot. And so that there's a challenge to that model, but that model is sustainable, I think. The other thing we've talked about is structure, right? So when content is all the same and it's all saturated, does structure become the new content? So instead of being an indie banger show, do we run a series of tournaments where there are elimination tournaments and things like that, and every match theoretically matters? So that's another concept we've looked at. You asked what would get 1,000 people in the seats. I don't know. There's a couple of pie in the sky things I'm working on with very low probability of happening, but I'm working on them, that could be massive successes for an independent promotion. Outside of that, though, like even if every AEW star was available to us, right? Like let's say Mox wanted to come and do Warrior Wrestling. Okay, we want to do Mox versus Brian Keith, or Mox versus Warhorse, or Mox versus Jake something. Even Mox, again, AEW can only draw 3,000 in most cities right now. So even if we had one of AEW's 20 top stars, is that enough for us to draw 1,000? I don't think so. Not in this environment. Now, if we had booked Mox on a show in summer of 2019, we could have drawn 5,000. It just the whole landscape has changed.
I think there's a weird crutch with that because of the saturation everywhere. That the other thing is that fans aren't dumb. They know the AEW guys coming in. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That part of what me and you were talking about earlier of like, can we really make, and nothing against Mox or Warhorse. That's not what I'm saying. But other than that match would be very interesting for a lot of reasons. But like, other than a cool match, how do we make it matter?
Well, I'll give you a perfect example of that, Henry. And we might go in a sudden death over our bell time here. So the model for everything that we've done, or a lot of what we've done at Warrior, not everything, but the primary model, 50% of what we do at Warrior, is based on PWG, right? And I lived in LA in 2008, 2009, 2010. I went to PWG all the time there. Eric and I flew back out to LA in 2015 to go to PWG. PWG was the blueprint that in many ways became AEW. It was PWG mixed with New Japan, mixed with a few other things. PWG's latest show was the Mystery Vortex show, where they don't announce anything ahead of time. They do it every now and again. It turned out to be like 6 matches, each one which is an AEW guy versus an indie guy, and the AEW guy won. All 6 matches. And there was a lot of complaints from fans. The quality of the matches was still good. But again, TV guy versus non-TV guy wins.
Yeah, I was trying to hint at that without being too obvious about it.
No, I'll be obvious about it, right? Because they know, the guys who run PWG know that concern was out there. And that's part of why PWG isn't running as frequently anymore. What do they have, like Warrior, what do they have to offer? What are they going to do, even if they didn't use any TV guys and they brought the best non-TV guys together, which they used to do? They're not going to outbanger Dynamite and Collision. And so, what do you do? And that's why I think there are promotions, and I'll highlight one in a good way because I think it's awesome. I'll highlight 2 in a good way. Chicago style wrestling on the northwest side of the city, and Freelance. Each of them exist in one specific location. They do the show every month for pretty much the same audience. There's obviously change, right? But if there's 300 people at Freelance, 240 of them there every month, and the other 60 interchange among hundreds of other people. They tell a single story to a single audience and navigate that audience's feedback and vibe month to month. That's what CSW does. That's what freelance does. CSW even books itself in seasons. They say season premiere, season finale. So it's like it's like a TV show, right? They have 10 episodes or whatever it is. That model can work in this environment. But that's not the model Warrior is built on. So does Warrior become that? And then do we do it in Chicago and compete with those couple that are doing it really well? Or do we become it and go somewhere else to South Bend? Or do we become something else, right? Like there's just so many questions right now. And that's why we're in the wilderness, right? Like what Warrior offered, like PWG, was very specific and tangible until the last 15, 16 months. And again, I would even say that Osprey run in 22, you weren't seeing Osprey in South Bend or Grand Rapids with anybody else ever, right, in your lifetime. Like the Osprey run was the unique run. And that's part of what prompted us to bite the bullet and do that touring run, is that we had Will, right? We had Will for 6 months. And so with Will, we were going to barnstorm all these new places and bring new things and be that new thing you couldn't see or experience anywhere else. So I think the bottom line is, as we said at the beginning, we are in the wilderness. Not bad, but just not sure what we're growing up into next.
Well, that's a perfect place to leave it, I think. I want to end on this, though, but stay tuned because we're not done yet. So, little underdog promotion named Warrior Wrestling, isn't it? We'll figure it out.
So,
all right, that's it. Bye.
Ding, ding, ding.